I'm sorry?
You're under arrest.
Okay.
Violence south of the border.
Okay. Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir?
This CNN reporter handcuffed and arrested while covering violent protests following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
Please! Please, I can't breathe!
Seen here being held down by police. Then in Toronto late last week.
Family members say they don't believe Korchinski-Paquette would have jumped off the balcony, and they have made allegations that the 29-year-old was pushed.
The police killed my daughter.
Allegations of police misconduct against a black woman. Questions about race, policing, and politics. Joining me now to discuss this is Conservative candidate Leslyn Lewis. You have your PhD, Dr. Lewis. You are an accomplished lawyer. When you look at these images coming out of Canada and the United States over the past few days, what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is that this is a very interesting clip for you to be asking a Conservative leadership contestant of Canada. But since you've asked, I think that, my prayers go out to the families and to people who are suffering under COVID because, there are heightened strains and pressures that people are feeling. And so I feel that we as leaders have to make sure that we don't escalate situations and that we make sure that our first responders are not overworked and that they receive the necessary training for heightened situations and that we deal with issues, including mental health issues within the community, and also that we deal with communities who are suffering a greater impact from COVID, included racialized communities.
If you were to be elected Prime Minister of Canada, like any Prime Minister, you would have to deal with Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on how you would interact with the President?
Well, I would interact with him from a position of mutual respect. He is the leader of, one of the most powerful countries in the world. And so it would just be a situation of mutual respect. I mean, the things that I've seen over the last few days with some of the comments that he's made, I don't believe that they are helpful. And I think that leaders, as I said, should always attempt to de-escalate situations and to resolve situations that lead to us, unifying our country.
You have put out some positions and been very open about them, saying that you're socially conservative, that you are willing to reopen the question of access to abortion to restrict from what you call coercive abortions or sex selection abortions. You've also said that you would not march in a gay pride parade. A lot of people say, look, that is what brought the Conservative Party down in the last election. These are big, important issues for people, especially in urban centres. And while everyone has a right to have their opinion, someone with those opinions may not have a chance of winning the Prime Ministership of Canada. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think that my opinions are being actually misconstrued and actually not summarized in the way that I presented them. My stance on abortion is very clear. I can't come up with 4 policies that are unifying, that the majority of Canadians support. The majority of Canadians do not support misogyny, and they do not believe that a fetus should be terminated on the sole basis that it is a female. And so that's actually a unifying policy. I haven't brought forth any policies that the majority of Canadians don't believe in. And, with respect to the Gay Pride Parade, I'm not certain why the media is so obsessed with it because, I speak to my friends who are gay and they don't attend the parade. And we don't seem to have a problem with each other. And I've always supported and made sure that I have worked to advance causes for all Canadians. And I will continue to do that, to treat all Canadians with equal dignity and respect. And I don't think that marching in a parade is indicative of how well you'll treat Canadians. I see it as something that will advance my political career. And I don't feel it's necessary to use a group to do that.
The situation in Canada's long-term care homes, extremely distressing reports that we saw last week. You put out a statement about that, talking about making sure that there are better regulation and standards for our elderly. But as a part of that statement, I noticed you also said that you wanted to stop the expansion of categories for medically assisted death. Now, you are a lawyer, and this was ordered by a court that the Canadian government had to reconsider the expansion of those categories. So I'm wondering how you square that.
Well, I'm very, very concerned that euthanasia is going to be extended towards, especially individuals who do not have mental capacity. And there's even talk about extending it towards teenagers without mental capacity. And so I'm very, very concerned about that, that our society is increasingly becoming one that devalues the sanctity of life. And so that's very concerning.
But if a court has said that the government has to look at the categories, that it's too narrow, then isn't that something that they have to do legally?
Well, that may be something that they have to do, but there's still a concern that our society is moving towards a complete disrespect for the sanctity of life. And so, as a concerned citizen, I find it very disconcerting that we would extend euthanasia to people who do not have the mental capacity to make that decision.
When you've had a chance to look at some of the reports of what's happening in the long-term care homes, do you believe that some of this is criminal and that some of the care home owners and companies behind this should be held legally responsible?
Well, I haven't looked at a criminal investigation, so I don't want to draw conclusions about criminality. And I can say that I found the reports that I've reviewed to be extremely upsetting. And none of us want our loved ones to be in such deplorable condition. So I know that provincially, Premier Ford has committed to working on making sure that there's changes. And the reports clearly indicate that the treatment fell below the standard of care. And I think it's of utmost importance that we care for the most vulnerable in our society, including our seniors. And we need to foster a culture of respect, which includes providing services that meet the minimum standard of care.
Leslyn Lewis, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing some of your time and thoughts on your vision for this country.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us. For the West Block, I'm Mercedes Stephenson.